Welcome to A Parent's Guide to Child Development. I'm your host, Annamarie Firley from Fledglings Flight. Each podcast, we strive to give parents the tools they need to help their child thrive through conversations with experts in child development and psychology, where you can learn about the most important information that you didn't know existed. I'm so excited to talk to Andrea Gingras about building language through connection. Welcome, Andrea. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I have been a speech language pathologist for over 18 years. I graduated with my bachelor's in psychology with linguistics and realized that I really wanted to do something different. And I slowly found speech pathology, and I went ahead and got a master's degree. But prior to that, I was a nanny for a young boy, Ben, who was non-speaking. Now, he didn't have autism, but he had very close symptoms related to Angelman syndrome. So he was non-speaking. And what I learned the time that I was his nanny for around 8 years or so is that he communicated in ways that was different than us, right? Because he didn't use words, but he would communicate by pulling my hand. He would communicate by vocalizing. He would use body proximity. He would use eye gaze. He would do all these other different ways that he could communicate. Andrea, I'm hungry. Andrea, I want this. I want to go outside, type thing. And it was fun. He could tell me that he was happy just through his vocalizations. So within that time with him, he taught me that I need to work with kids with language delays. So as my schooling evolved, I found speech therapy, got into a master's program at Michigan State University, and just loved it. That was the best time. My grad school years were the best GPA, right? It was great. It was where I needed to be. And then in 2008, I moved to California on a total whim. I wasn't planning on it, and now I'm here and I've got my own company and I'm working on spreading the word about using a strength-based approach, because I used a strength-based approach when I worked with Ben, and I didn't even know I did. So in grad school, you're taught compliance-based therapy. You're taught how to make kids communicate. And I never really liked it. I did it because that's how we were taught. And then COVID happened and I learned all about strength-based therapy and I loved it. And now when I use it in my sessions, I always tell families, this is when the magic happens. Do you want to see magic? I can do magic, right? With speech and language therapy. So it's really cool. And Ben is the driving force of that. And he passed away in 2022 at the age of 30. So he spent 30 years on this planet, never said a word. And now I have a company that's in memory of him. I dedicate funds to help support his cause in Michigan. So I still contact people in Michigan, which is kind of cool.
Ah, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
So I just want to sort of back up a little bit. And so when do parents start realizing that maybe their child might be nonverbal?
So to start, we want to start using the word non-speaking. Okay. So I'll just put that out there, but it's all good. We're all learning. There's no shame. It's all good. So usually people start noticing, I would say around 18 months of age, when the kid is 18 months, because that's when kids are starting to use single words and maybe they're not. But there are some families that might wait till 2. We're going to wait and see. You know, doctors say that a lot. We're going to wait and see. And then they wait till 2. Well, at 2, typical developing language is to have 2-word utterances. What's tricky, though, is with the autistic population, which is what I now specialize in, is there's a thing called Gestalt language processing, which is where children learn language in chunks. So instead of learning one word at a time and building on, they're learning and repeating usually phrases from shows.
Mm.
So they're learning language in chunks. So sometimes you have an 18-month-old that says, jump in muddy puddles because Peppa Pig said that. So it's hard. And then people start saying, oh, well, that's this many words. They're fine. And it's not that Gestalt language processing is a delayed way of learning language. It's just a different way. But usually kids that are Gestalt language learners need to be taught language in a different way. So I try to teach families how to do that, and it's not by asking questions.
Mm.
There's no like, what color is this? Where is it? What is it? What is it? What is it? There's no questions. So
Interesting. So, well, I think I wanted to ask a follow-up question to like Gestalt
yeah,
language learning.
yes,
And so if they're learning complete sentences or phrases
yes,
because they've seen them on TV or maybe they've heard them from their parents, it's something that
yep,
they say often enough. Um,
yeah.
how does that affect their ability to communicate their needs?
So it's gonna show up differently. They're most likely gonna produce a phrase that we can't take necessarily literally. I've worked with clients that use full phrases. I want chips at like the age of 3, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, but and that will be obvious. But then they might say bunnies, and you're like, right? Someone may be like, oh, they want their bunny stuffed animal. Oh, they want a bunny book. Well, this little girl used just the word bunnies, one word, meaning she wanted the bunny crackers. And it never really progressed to, I want bunnies, but she would be like, Mommy, I want chips. Mommy, I want water. Mommy, I want juice. But bunnies was never, Mommy, I want bunny crackers. It was just bunnies. And when she said bunnies, we knew. So it's in essence, it's the family and my job to try to figure out what those gestalts mean, because jumping in muddy puddles for the little girl that said it meant to look at her and watch her,
Oh,
not that she was jumping in muddy puddles. Now, later on, in the later stages of Gestalt language learning, those phrases start having referential meaning, and then they can get there. And then it is more of, I am jumping in a puddle. But early stages, it doesn't always mean it. I had another little boy that would say back hurts anytime he wanted a hug, because at one point his back hurt and he got lots of hugs. So he started saying back hurts when he wanted a hug. So
interesting.
those are some examples where you might see that if you start seeing them using a phrase, but it means something different, it's usually Gestalt language learning.
So you really need to know the context of where
Yeah.
that came
Came
from.
from. Yeah, because a lot of times it'll contain, or it'll have motion. It'll have okay. It will carry emotion,
Okay.
and it's linked to that emotion.
Okay. So can you define exactly what Gestalt is? I mean, I think I'm understanding it through context, but for anybody who doesn't know, like what exactly is
Right, is it? So Gestalt language learning, Gestalt is, I believe it means script. It's literally a chunk. It's a chunk of language. So they're learning language instead of learning car, red car, mama car, car go, mama car go. They're picking up on something. Sometimes it's what parents say. A lot of my autistic kids will say when they fall, they'll say, "Are you hurt? Are you okay?" They'll ask that when they fall, because that's what the parent has said to them every time they fall. So they're just echoing. So it's Gestalt language learning is based off of echolalia and echolalic language. And sometimes it's immediate and sometimes it's delayed.
And what does echolalia mean?
So echolalia is when they imitate, when kids imitate what they hear.
So echoing, basically.
Yes, echoing. Yes, echoing. We just in our realm we call it echolalia.
All right. So I think I understand what's going on here.
Yeah,
You mentioned this a couple times
yeah,
when you're talking about yourself, that you were talking about they use a strength-based method of speech
yes,
therapy, and I want
yes.
to know what that means.
All right. So strength-based therapy is meaning that when I walk into the home and I do therapy in the home, I focus on what the child is good at. I focus on what their strengths are to then stretch their strengths into the areas that they struggle with. I don't talk about it as compliance-based theory is deficit-based, but I don't come in saying, oh, they can't do this, they can't talk, they can't do this, right? I come in and I go, oh, wow, they just handed me something. That means they wanted help. That means they wanted to show me something. Oh, look, they're looking at me and then looking at something else. We're having some joint attention. Oh, they grabbed my hand and they put it over here because they need help. Wow, this is great. So I take what they're already doing, which a lot of families kind of miss because they're so focused on what they can't do. And they're like, they don't use words. My company is called Love Without Words. The words will come if and when they're ready to come. That's what I tell families. I can't make a child talk, but I can use their strengths to build trust, connection, right? So I don't sit at a table and do table work. I do whatever they're doing. And if they're outside, I go outside. If they're under a table, I go under a table. I follow the kid around and I just model language based on knowing what they're good at.
So when you mean by model language is you describe what they're doing, like, oh, I see that you're making a mud pie, or I see that you're digging
Right?
for worms. Is that what you mean by modeling?
Yeah, so modeling language, if they're a Gestalt language processor, and it's funny because I do this whether they're learning language, analytic language learning, which is one word at a time and building on, or this Gestalt way of learning language. So regardless of what track they're on, the language I model would be what they're going to say. So
Okay.
instead of me saying, oh, I see you are making a mud pie, I would say, oh, I'm making a mud pie. The mud is squishy. It's on my hands. It's so messy. I use lots of intonation and I use a lot of what they might be saying. Because I'll have a kid that will like push me away and I'll model, I don't want you here. Don't touch that. Right? I'm going to model language that I think they're trying to convey. And it's up to them if they want to echo it back or not. Some kids do and some kids don't. But if I add intonation, usually they're like, oh, this is kind of fun. I'm going to try to say it. And then they do.
That's so interesting. So
Yeah.
what does it mean when you say compliance-based approach?
So compliance-based therapy is when the adult has the lead and the adult wants the lead, right? So it kind of goes to, there's multiple terms here. So I was talking about strength-based therapy where we use their strengths to pull them out and get better at what they struggle with. And then we have compliance-based therapy that is adult-led. Strength-based is child-led. I mean, I follow the child's lead, and then compliance-based is usually adult-led, meaning do this first, and then you get this. Do this task, and then you can have the thing you want. Where I come in and say, you get the thing you want no matter what. Like, you don't have to do a non-preferred task to get something you want to do. We're going to start with what you want to do, because guess what? That's where you have motivation. And that's where you have intrinsic motivation. Compliance-based therapy works on extrinsic motivation. Do this task so that you get a reward. I don't base it on, I already have the reward. Let's do the reward right away. No one wants to wait for the reward, right? So in compliance-based therapy, the kid doesn't trust you and there's limited engagement. So what I find is kids that go from compliance-based therapy, whether it be speech therapy that's compliance-based, ABA, which is behavior therapy, which is usually compliance-based. When I take a kid going in that, and then they meet with me, parents go, they're interacting with you. They don't interact with the other people. My kid is talking with you. They don't talk with the other people. My kid is staying with you and not eloping. They elope every time the other person comes. I get that all the time. And I'm saying that's the magic of strength-based therapy. I love it. I love it. The parents are like, my kid interacts with you and they don't interact with anybody else. And it's like, well, it's because I'm not taking something away, expecting them to say what I have so they can get it. So my example for this one is a little boy likes to go outside. Okay, all kids like to go outside. And yes, he has said outside before. He said that word. He can say it. So a compliance-based therapist would be, I'm not opening the door until you say outside. And they literally will not open the door. They will have the kid in a meltdown, totally dysregulated, and not even open the door to let them out. Whereas I come in and go, oh, I want to go outside. And I pause. And if they don't say it right away, I open the door. And guess what? We go outside and I model language outside. So I don't do anything compliance-based. I model. I allow the kid access to the reward and roll with that. And it's kind of cool.
Ah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a coughing break.
Okay, you're good.
I'm like, you were talking, I'm like, I have to cough.
You have to cough.
And I can't hold it in any longer.
You're totally fine.
Well, that's amazing. What I was thinking about when I was listening to you talk is sounds like you are meeting children where they are. And you're also looking for other ways that they're communicating through gestures, not necessarily through like language based. So you're coming to them, you're seeing how they adapted to communicate their needs and meeting them there, and then giving them the tools that they need to be able to communicate verbally. Does that sound about what
Yeah. No, that's totally true. Yep. I meet them where they're at, and it's interesting. I really watch, I observe a lot of what they're doing, and I point that out to parents. I'm like, it was so subtle, but did you notice that's what they did? And that meant this. And yeah, it's a lot of it's observation, which a lot of times I'm not talking and it's quiet. And parents are, there's nothing going on. Talk to my child, right? They get worried, right? And I'm like, it's okay. Sometimes within my sessions, I have to be quiet so that there's kind of like this dead silence. And then the kid starts vocalizing or saying a word or comes closer to me and uses their preferred way of communicating, which might not be words, which is okay, right? Which is why we do use the word non-speaking. When we use the term nonverbal, I'll just share, when we use the term nonverbal, it can imply that the child doesn't understand.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm guilty. I've used that term in the past, and you know better, you do better, right? But so I mean, I used to say, oh, I babysat Ben and he was nonverbal. I used to say that all the time, and now I don't, because he showed ways that he understood. And another bit of strength-based therapy is presuming competence. So it's presuming the child understands, presuming the child can communicate. it's presuming that, and it helps for the child. So then, even though he couldn't talk to me, I would talk to him as if he understood everything I said. I didn't talk to him like a little kid. I talked to him like I would his siblings, and I just presumed competence. I mean, I didn't know that term back in the 90s. I didn't know strength-based back in the 90s, but that's what I did with him. And we connected and we engaged and we became friends. And that's where it starts. It has to start with connection. You can't just jump into language. You've got to build connection and trust with the child.
So that dovetails nicely into my next question is, what are the key components of using a strength-based approach?
Yeah, so this I share with parents and speech therapists, and it is sensory regulation. So the first one is sensory regulation. The second is engagement, and last is communication. And I always joke with fellow SLPs, speech language pathologists, that we're speech language pathologists, but I don't work on communication in the first session. I work on sensory regulation. So we want to make sure the child is sensory regulated, which means sometimes I go into homes and kids are literally bouncing off the walls, or every time they take a toy, they're throwing it. I get lots of, I call them chuckers. They're chucking toys all the time. And I go, okay, we're at stage 1, sensory. And I go, what do they need? And I go in with a spinning seat, a seat that spins. I go in with things that hook to the wall and I can pull it off and use some deep pressure. I bring weighted, like exercise balls, like 6 pounds. You can't throw that, I'll tell you right now. It's going to fall. You're not throwing it overhand, right? But it gives them sensory input. I bring weighted lap blankets. I bring things, and I might hide smaller toys underneath the blanket, and they have to pick it up to get it. Now, once a child is regulated in their body, then they can engage. Once they can engage, then they can communicate in the way they want to. There's no, you have to say a word, right? There's no compliance where you have to say a word, you have to point to a picture, you have to, it's communicate however you want. And I'm going to model other ways you can communicate and see which one you like. But those are the 3 components.
Amazing. I'm going to cough again. So
Okay.
what is it about that, the sensory regulation or having, you were talking about using weighted blankets or heavier things. What is it about those types of objects that helps to help them regulate their sensory systems?
No, that's a great question. So, our body, everyone's body is different. So some bodies crave input. Some bodies are like, don't touch me. Don't go there type thing. So some kids I can touch, some kids I can't. Some kids I can give a weighted medicine ball and have them lift it and give that input to their body. And some kids are like, I'm not touching that. I'm not going to do it. Right. So everybody is different, but the important thing is when we get, if our system in essence is like, I got to go here and I got to bounce off the wall and then I got to go here and I got to roll and I'm going to crash into you. I got a lot of crashers, run and they crash right into me. And I'm going, okay, you need most of my kids want deep input, high input, get on a chair and spin. I mean, I can't watch them. I think I'd puke, but right. Can't do that anymore. I used to do it as a kid, but so their body like craves input and then they're like, oh, okay, now I can work. Right. So I've heard another therapist talk about, like, if you're doing a call or doing a session and you have an itch in your back that you can't reach, you are focused so much on getting that itch that you can't really attend to anything. I think that's a really just a good example. It's kind of like these kids have itches that I can't attend to you right now because I got to get that itch first. And that itch might be, I need to throw something. So the kids that throw tell me they want sensory input to their body, and they get a lot when they throw something. And now they're like, okay, I'm good. I can move on. I can go on. Right. But if we're constantly in a state of dysregulation, you can't learn. You can't learn when you have a scratch on your back, or the other one I give is, some people love roller coasters. Okay. I am not a fan. I will do it if it's a part of a group and then we're all going and I kind of get geeked up about it, I'll do it. But if it's a scary one, when I come off of that roller coaster, I'm like, okay, I need to touch the ground. Don't talk to me about where we want to go for food because I can't even comprehend that right now. So I kind of talk about it in those terms to families and be like, after a roller coaster ride, I could not do a presentation. I wouldn't be able to access that language part of the brain because my body is in so much recuperation from that sensory input that I just had that I just can't even go there. So, but there's some kids that crave it. There's some kids that parents are like, oh yeah, we go to places with roller coasters and they go and go and go and go and go because that's what their body's craving.
So they're sensory seekers, and then like
Yes.
other children or like have sensory sensitivity, so they're avoiding the input because
Yes.
it's too intense and it's
Yes.
overwhelming for them.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So go back and tell me a little bit why connection is so important in the work that you do.
So connection is huge. I feel like, I mean, the sensory bit is big because it's the first step, but sometimes I'll say, well, the first step is connection because it really is. If you don't connect, you build connection with the child based on their interests, which is why it's child-led and which is why it's play-based therapy. So when we build engagement, especially with a kid that is non-speaking, they get comfortable with you. They are more eager to try something new rather than seeing me as a person that's saying, you have to do this. The kid doesn't have to do anything. That's what's amazing. I'm just there as a support to model gestures, to model language, to be that safe person that they can trust. And then that's when communication just happens out of being intrinsically motivated to want to communicate. I always tell families, I'm like, I don't want them to communicate to me with me because they have to, because I want them to. I want them to communicate because they want to, when they want to, how they want to. This is about them. This is not a therapy that's not about me. It's about what's good for them. And how you get there is through engagement and connection.
Interesting. So what can a parent do right now to best support their non-speaking child?
So the best thing that they can do is, for one, just be present with them. This can be tricky. Autistic kids engage differently than typical neurotypical kids. They just do. They engage in a different way. So if you have a neurotypical child and an autistic neurodivergent child in the home, in the same home, most likely they engage differently. So I always tell families, it's because parents will tell me, my kid doesn't engage with me. And I'll say, well, recreate something. And then I'll say, actually, they are engaging with you. You just don't see it because you're used to seeing engagement in this way, right? So the first step is just be present with them. The other thing you can do is model what they do. So model how they play. I do a lot of that. I mean, if a kid isn't looking at me, that's fine. I don't worry about eye contact. because once I see engagement, usually eye contact starts to kind of increase, but I don't prompt for it. There's other people that prompt for it, but that's more of a compliance-based approach. So it's more what families can do right now would be, I kind of go all over the place. What parents can do right now is be present, model or imitate how they play or what they're doing. If they produce any vocal sounds, validate what they're saying, imitate it back to them, comment, oh, wow, yeah, it is cool, even if all they did was babble to you. And then model some simple 1 or 2 word phrases with lots of intonation. And what you'll see over time is that they hang with you longer. They look at you, they touch you, they get closer to you. It just looks different. But you just want to start, and again, you presume competence. So even a child that's non-speaking, you're going to model language. Because you never know when that kid is going to echo what you just said. And then you're going to be like, oh my gosh, did you just hear what he said? Right? So you never know, and you don't want to miss that opportunity, but you don't want to model big giant paragraphs, but you want to model something that's age appropriate.
Yeah, that makes me think of when you're learning a foreign language that you understand before you can speak fluently.
Right.
You understand
Yes.
what you can say.
Yeah.
And even like with little babies, it's the same thing, is that they're going to understand you more than they're going to be able to communicate. So to your point, that presuming competency is something that I recommend to parents as well, as to, even though, don't assume just because your child isn't when they're in the babbling stage that they're not understanding what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing when I tell families to presume competence and talk to them as if they understand. They'll share with me the next week and they'll say, I said, hey, you're going to help me do the laundry. Let's put it in. Right. They're like, yeah, they totally helped. I said, see, they understand more. Ben understood more than I thought when I started working with him. He liked knocking magazines off the table. He would knock magazines off the table one at a time. And I remember I was making lunch and I just like turned over and I said, hey, when you're done, doing that, you're going to have to put them back on the table. And it took him about a minute to process. He had slow processing time. And all of a sudden he starts putting them one by one back on the table. And I remember the mom saying, oh yeah, he always knocks them off the table and he never puts them back on. So I just well, I'm gonna tell him. That's what I would have told the siblings. If you're gonna do that, you got to put them back on. And he did it. And after that one time, that was back in the 90s, I was like, oh my gosh, he totally. I didn't have a visual cue. I didn't show him putting them back on. I was in a totally different room, and he did it. I'm like, okay, he understands more than people give him credit for.
That's amazing. It must be so validating for them too, to feel like somebody's finally understanding what they're saying, because it's got to be really frustrating to be trying to communicate and nobody's understanding what you're trying to say, and poorly isolated, and when finally somebody seems to understand what you're communicating, that's got to be amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of times that you're playing alongside the child, or you're there and you're present with them. And do you get feedback from parents if they feel like you're not actually doing anything?
Yes, I do. It's a common misconception within the speech language realm and there's lots of parents that, now I do therapy in the home, but I've done therapy in a clinic before. And I've had parents, say, well, all you're doing was playing with them. And then sometimes I'll ask the family, well, what do you want me to do? right? Just to kind of get it from their perspective, like what in their, oh, I want them sitting at a table. We want them doing flashcards. And I just say, well, is that how they play at home? Do they sit at a table and play with flashcards at home? And they're like, oh no, they're on the slide and they're on the bike and they're playing with their cars and they're playing with the doll and they're playing Legos. And I'm like, okay, well, that is the work of a child. The work of a child is play. And it's really hard to gain engagement with a flashcard. So, and there's a lot of families that do flashcards, and I'm kind of to the point where, okay, well, you could have a picture of a duck, or you could actually have a toy duck that can sleep, jump, hide. You can't really do that with a flashcard, right? So, yeah, it teaches vocabulary, but flashcards teach naming, and we don't go through the world naming things to get what we want. Like I have an example that I still kind of use, right? There's a lot of autistic kids, and this is not a problem, but there's a lot of autistic kids that can name letters, numbers, shapes, colors. And then they start putting two words together, because maybe they're not Gestalt language learners, but they start putting two words together, and now we have red ball, right? Two ball. And I go, okay, this is great, but we need some verbs, because I get families that say, well, they're not putting long strings of words together. And it's because of the language that they have. Okay, I must just stop a minute. That's not the question you asked. And I went totally on a different thing. And I'm like, okay, I do that. People I mentor know that. I'm like, went somewhere totally different with that. Okay, let's do that question one more time. That'll.
Now I'm trying to remember what the question was.
I think it was the play.
Oh yeah. So
it was the play. Sorry.
Let's try again. All right. So it sounds like a lot of times what you're doing is you're playing alongside the child, or you're at least, present with them as they're playing. Do you ever get feedback from parents that they don't see that you're doing anything, and they're wondering, like, what's going on, and why you're not working with the child?
Yeah, so this is really common within the speech language realm, where parents are worried that we're just playing with their child and we're not getting work done. What parents need to realize is that we're building language through their work. And a child's work is actually play. It's not sitting at a table unless the child wants to, fine with me. But a lot of times it's being on the floor and it's playing, and it's during these play episodes where kids then are more relaxed and comfortable with sharing with us what they know, how to communicate. Play is intrinsically motivating, which is a key component of strength-based therapy. It's being intrinsically motivated to engage with you. I want to play with you because you've got a really fun toy. I want to play with you because you're playing with what I'm doing, even though it's kind of different. I worked with a little girl that we would play with pine needles. I spent almost 30 minutes with one little girl, autistic child, Gestalt language learner, who was putting pine needles in a screen door. This is where sitting at a table and doing work would be totally inappropriate. We would probably get less language, less engagement, and actually less of what the parent wants doing work. So I follow their lead, right? We do child-led therapy, and I modeled language with pine needles, which I didn't even think I could do it. But I was like, ouch, that hurts my finger. Now, she didn't use a lot of language, but her eye gaze skyrocketed. Her engagement was phenomenal. 30 minutes playing with pine needles. Her engagement was through the roof. I mean, I was doing it and I'm going, I cannot believe I have got her engaged for this long with pine needles. So it doesn't even matter what you're doing. But what I don't want to do is have her sit at a table and do work at 3.5. Because I probably would have lost her. She probably would have eloped. I don't want kids eloping. I want them hanging with me. And if they do elope, that's okay. But, it's one of those things.
So what tips do you have for parents to help them help their child become more engaged with them?
So key tips would be watch and see if they're sensory regulated. Start thinking of ideas of what they like sensory wise. A lot of kids like swings and things like that, because gives lots of input. I have a Instagram page that I try to give, recommendations for sensory input items to use. You can buy expensive things, or you can put water and glitter and food coloring and soap in like a juice bottle that you've used, glue it, tape it off, and now you have heavy work with a jug of really fun sensory looking water in a juice container. I tell families that, or you can put like beans in a wagon and have them pull and push a wagon. So there's ways you can do it where you don't have to spend a lot of money to get that same input. So you want to think of sensory right away, right? If your kid can't engage, you need to start with sensory first. And families are honestly amazed when I come in, like usually the second session, because now I've realized what the kid needs sensory wise. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I need to buy that and I need to buy that. And I'm like, please don't, because then it's not going to be fun for me and I'm going to have to buy something else. But I try to give them other ideas. So you just want to make sure sensory. And then tips, I kind of think and along the lines of, we're just trying to build connection. We're trying to let's just have fun. A lot of kids need like anticipation activities. So blowing up a balloon and watching it go, that's something you can repeat over and over and over and over again. Another game that we do is Achu, the Achu game, where you put something soft on your head and then you Achu and it falls off. That happens over and over and over again. And we get to a point where I just have to say like, Achoo, and a kid will bring me a toy and put it on my head. And that's initiation. And now they haven't said, let's do Achoo game, but they put it on my head, which means let's do it. Right. So you want to think of social games, peekaboo, activities where they need you to help them. Because if they're just toys where they don't need your help, there's not going to be a lot of engagement. I learned that if you can pick a game where they need your help to do it, then they're more engaged with you because they want you to put it on your head. They'll put it on their head, but usually they want it on yours.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a super fascinating conversation. And I would love for you to tell people how they can get in contact with you and reach out and learn more about what you're doing.
All right. So again, my company is called Love Without Words Speech Therapy. I'm located in Concord, California, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area. I service most of the East Bay. If you're in the area, you know what the East Bay is. But I also, I have a website, which is, it's a little different, but it's www.slplovewithoutwords.com. And that's the same hashtag thing for Instagram, SLP Love Without Words on Instagram. You can follow me there. I try to share as much as I can about Gestalt language processing there. My website has a information form you can fill out if you want to start services or just do parent training over Zoom. I offer that to people that are not in the state of California. And if you are a speech therapist, maybe you're watching this, I don't know. But if you're a speech therapist, I offer mentoring, and my Instagram handle is SLP_mentor, the number 4 and the letter U. So SLP mentor for you. I offer trainings on strength-based therapy on that Instagram, and I'm hoping to have some parent education trainings offering for free or at a lower price coming soon, so that people that are not in California can still learn from myself. So that's the plan.
And so people can reach out through direct messaging through Instagram if they have questions.
Yes, they can do that as well. Yes, yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you for your time. It's been fantastic, and
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
I think your information is going to really help a lot of people. Thank
I
you.
think so too. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of families that they don't. I say strength-based, and they go, "What? What is that?" And I'm like, "Just sit and watch. I'll show you what it is." And the parents are just, they're amazed.
Yeah. Thank you for your time today.
All right. Thank you.